Hello and welcome to Then and Now. I'm your host, Brandon Hodnett, and today I'm catching up with Rebecca Hammond, class of 2013. Rebecca was an All-American in the outdoor 1500 at Swarthmore, graduated with highest honors in biology, and has gone on to do some pretty incredible things since graduation. Rebecca, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. So great to catch up.
So I want to first start off by asking you, let's rewind. What brought you to Swarthmore as a student in the first place?
Yeah, so I was looking for a small liberal arts college, and Swarthmore was, one of the top three or something. And so I visited those three, and I liked Swarthmore the best. I really felt, the campus was gorgeous, and I really felt comfortable with the students that I met. So I think that was it. Like everybody was kind of quirky and weird, and I'm quirky and weird. So I was able to just be myself, and that was a huge draw for me.
Nice. Can you reflect on what some of your fondest memories as a student athlete were at Swarthmore?
As a student athlete, well, like the bus ride to track meets is always horrible because you're nervous, but on the way home, it's awesome because everybody's kind of goofing off and you're all riding that post-race high. Yeah, I'd say post-race, like the whole day is the best.
What were some of the toughest, the most challenging things about just balancing being a student and an athlete?
Yeah, well, towards the end of my senior year, I was preparing for honors exams and for NCAA nationals and outdoor track. And that combination was really stressful for me. And I think I learned a lot about myself and how to manage stress during that 1 month period leading up to that. I was just I had a lot of trouble sleeping and had to learn how to realize okay, it's time to sleep. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. Worrying doesn't do anything. And so it was a big, sort of stress management, juggling multiple balls in the air period for me. Yeah.
So, I think you competed at nationals 4 times. Is that right? Does that sound
Something
right?
like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What if you look back on that, what was that like competing on the national stage for you at those NCAA championships? What were the emotions and just what was that environment like?
Qualifying for nationals was always a huge thrill because you want to keep going, you want to get to the next best thing. But nationals for me at the time, I was going alone. And so it was sort of, it's when you have the whole team there, it's different than when you're just going by yourself with Pete. I mean, Pete's the best. I love hanging out with Pete. But I think when I was there, now I think multiple people go to nationals and it's so cool. And I'm proud to imagine that I'm part of the, what led to sort of more talent coming in and, more people going to nationals. But at the time it was sort of isolating a little bit. But I mean, thrilling, super thrilling. So fun to go out there and compete with the best athletes in the nation and to meet them and then to race them. I mean, it's a huge, it was really nerve-wracking, but really fun.
Yeah. And then you were named an All-American in the 1500, I guess, in your senior year. Is that right?
Yeah. So I snuck in the last spot for All-American. So I think I got 8th that year, and it turned out it was the fastest finals race in the 1500 in years. So I'm still very happy with my performance and was so thrilled that I made that spot because it was some really tough competition that year. And and that same day, our honors exams results came back. And so I was just on cloud 9 because I got All-American. And then I get a text from my boyfriend at the time because he had saying that the honors results were back, and I checked. I'm like, oh my God, I got highest honors. So it was just too much. It was so good.
Awesome. What a great day.
Yeah, it was really nice.
So you talked about Pete Carroll as your head coach. Do you have any memories or stories about Pete that you'd be able to share?
Oh my gosh, Pete is he's so every sort of car ride or bus ride. So I spent a lot of alone time with Pete because I was going to some of these meets later in the year, and we would just have the most interesting conversations. We'd talk about not just evolution, but sort of the general principles that the the general principles that lead to the theory of evolution, and just stuff like that. Like you always have something to talk about with Pete, and it's so fun. And he always has like some other, perspective, some way to look at whatever you're nervous about. And he's always joking. I don't know. It was like Pete's something else. I've never had a coach like him, and I'm so glad that I got to work with him.
That's great.
Yeah.
What were some classes or some professors that you really appreciated from your time at Swarthmore?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad with names, but my cog sci class, which I took with this linguistics professor who, Harris maybe, I don't remember, but he was awesome. Then I took an anthro class with Ned Carney. She was awesome. My bio professor, so I was a bio major. Volmer is like so great. Scott Gilbert is just like, he's like represents sort of the joy of the intellectual world, and like the joy of sort of a liberal arts education, where it's kind of the intersection of like art and everything. Kaplinski, there's like every single one of my professors was so, or of the professors that I really loved them, and there's a lot of them, and they're in a lot of different subjects, so that was cool. Yeah, like I think Swarthmore, you're always thinking about the in-between. So I was a bio major and a chem minor, but you were always thinking about, so like, what from my neuro class sort of ties into my image of Africa history class. Oh, that was taught by Burke. He's amazing too. Like, I was always kind of thinking about that in between, and like in my essays for those classes, I was always kind of writing about how but in, physical chemistry, blah, 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 and like how those tied together. And that was so fun. And the professors actually appreciated it. So I think like, I don't know, it's not a cookie cutter school, and the professors are not cookie cutter people, and they're looking for all of that in between thought. They're looking for how subjects can, illuminate other subjects. And so that was my favorite part, I would say.
Where did life take you after Swarthmore?
Yeah, so I feel like leading up to Swarthmore and leading up to med school, I didn't really have like a goal in life. I was kind of just going for the next best thing. And somehow I was lucky that I had an older sister who went to Swarthmore, and also who was like, you should look for a liberal arts college, because otherwise I think I would have tried to like go to, a big school. But after Swarthmore, I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought that I would probably go to med school, but I wasn't sure. So I applied for a Fulbright grant, because I knew that regardless, that would be something interesting. And I was interested in science and scientific research. And so it would be good to like explore the realm of global health, which I was, because I loved my microbiome class taught by Volmer. So I found a Swarthmore alum, Carol Holm Hansen, who works at the Norwegian Institute of Public Health on tuberculosis diagnostics, and I applied for a fellowship to go work with her. And I spent 2 years in Norway, in Oslo, with that Fulbright grant, and from Norway applied to med school. And then and while in Norway, I got to continue running track, which was really fun. They have a great post-collegiate system, or like great, like out there. Their sports aren't associated with their schools, so it's all clubs, meaning that I could just jump right in, even though I wasn't going to school there. And competed there for a couple of years before starting at Harvard in Boston, and that's what brought me back to the States.
And you've done a lot of Spartan racing and obstacle course racing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So then, while at Harvard, I finally quit running, because I was always an injured runner. I was always like cross training and running, and that was fine. But once I started at Harvard, medical school is not the same as undergrad at Swarthmore, at least. Because in undergrad, like, you're getting intellectually stimulated, you're really diving deeply into topics, and thinking about the why, the why that's before the why you just asked. And in med school, there's so much information, and a lot of it, like, we don't really know the why, but they don't necessarily, open with that. And so you're just like taught all these kind of superficial facts, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And then you try and dig for the why, and like, it's not there because nobody knows, but you had to find that out for yourself. So there's a lot of like superficial learning, and I was not intellectually stimulated until we like started in clinic. And then, humans are infinitely intellectually stimulating, emotionally stimulating, everything. But when we were just doing preclinical, it was it was a long story to get back to the fact that it was too boring for me to also cross train and like be doing all that preclinical work. So I quit track and I started CrossFit, and then CrossFit was like another alternative sport and that bridged me into OCR, because people in obstacle course racing, people in CrossFit were like, you should run obstacle course races because there's good sponsorships there and you would be really good at them, because I was always really good at the endurance CrossFit events especially. And so I ran my first Spartan race and never looked back. Like that same year I went to the North American Championships, got second, went to World Championships, got second, and I was in med school at that time. And then yeah, when I graduated from med school, I had applied to residency in emergency medicine, because I thought like, oh, like I like, variety, I like fast pace, I like being physically engaged. And then like I read this letter to myself that I'd written on the first day of medical school about what I was excited about in medical school. And it was all about like the human mind and human behavior. And I was like, oh yeah, I should have known. I knew all along I want to go to psychiatry. But anyway, so I rescinded my applications and decided to take time off to just be an athlete. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. Yeah, and now I'm applying to residency in psychiatry. So kind of full, I don't know, circle, not really.
And can I ask a follow-up question on the Spartan racing? Can you just describe for those that aren't familiar with how that works? What's the distance? What are the obstacles? What all goes into running or competing in a Spartan race?
Yeah, so the sport is called obstacle course racing. Spartan is the biggest American company, at least, and they're and the different obstacle course races have slightly different formats. Spartan races in general tend to all have similar obstacles to one another. And they include a mixture of sort of like strength obstacles where you're carrying like, 2 40-pound sandbags up a ski slope, or a big bucket of gravel, and then it also has like some sort of agility obstacles where you're like going across monkey bars, but maybe they're muddy and so your hands are slipping. And there's one spear throw where you throw a rake handle with a nail in it at a hay bale, and that one's like surprisingly hard when you haven't done it before. Like the first time I did it, like the thing just like totally flips and lands flat, and you're like, oh my god, I'm such a whatever. And the distances range in Spartan races, at least when I started, ranged from 5K, so like 3 miles, through 13 miles for the competitive ones, and then they like get longer and longer for the less competitive ones. And yeah, but I guess those obstacle course races in general, like technically last anywhere from like 100 meters to ultramarathon. So all distances. The Spartan races tend to be on ski resorts, so they tend to be really mountainous, with varied terrain. Sometimes you're running through bramble and getting all torn up. And sometimes you're running through like waist deep mud running. And yeah, so it's the Spartan races, the Spartan brand tends to go for like grueling things. Okay. That's why they have those sort of more strength-based obstacles and tend to put you through some grueling terrain. Yeah, but I ran my first one. I was like, this is so fun, because like I had only really done track running, and my longer runs had never been that long because I'd never been able to do that much distance, but they were all kind of on roads. And so like starting to trail run, I realized, wow, this is totally different. Like it's like even just trail running is really fun. And that's kind of what I'm getting more into now. But yeah, they're pretty fun. It's like running, but with fun breaks where you get to do other stuff like play on monkey bars. So
cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's just physically exhausting. What do you do? And mentally, I'm sure too. What do you do to prepare yourself the day of a competition? Like as far as getting the right amount of rest the night before, fueling up. What do you do to be prepared for an event like that?
Yeah. So the night before, I'm usually very nervous about these kinds of things, and so the night before, to kind of turn that nervous energy into like turn it from anything negative into kind of positive nervous energy, I try and like imagine it as excitement. Like this, the feeling of being super anxious about something is similar to the feeling of being super excited about something, the physical feeling. So I try and reframe it as excitement, and I tend to do visualizations where I visualize myself going through the obstacles like kind of like with ease and grace, and that kind of turns it more into excitement, because it's like, this is a time I get to shine, rather than, oh my god, what happens if I don't do my best? Oh my god, what if so and so beats me? Oh my god, blah blah blah, blah. Because the truth is, like, yeah, those things can happen, but nothing that I'm going to do in my mind right now is going to like stop that from happening, so I don't need to worry about it. Worrying is not going to help. And then at night, I try and like remember like, oh, there's like no use in worrying about tomorrow. It's okay. That's how I like kind of relax myself so I can go to sleep. And then the morning of, my alarm for Spartan races, I tend to be like a later person. Like my natural sleep cycle, according to 23andMe, I would wake up at like 8:48 a.m. every morning. But in practice, that ends up being like my sleep cycle is like from 12 to midnight to 9 a.m. Spartan races, the gun always goes off at like 7:30 for the elite heats, and so I'm waking up at like 5 something. So my alarm always, like, I put as a little descriptor for the alarm a little heart. Like your alarm can have a label. It's a heart because it's just like, oh, like I love you, Rebecca. Like it's time to get up and go, and you're okay. And then I like eat my typical breakfast, take an Uber to the race venue, and yeah, there's no use in stressing, but I am going to stress. And so I just like try and sort of let everything go and just, I know what I'm doing. So I just execute. I just go and I register and I warm up and then it's go time.
Yeah.
Oh, and for fueling for races longer than 90 minutes or longer than an hour, I carry sugar packets with like goo gels, energy with me. Yeah. And you need to fuel.
Yeah. And then after a race or competition, are you icing up or what do you do?
So ideally I would be, getting my post-race nutrition in, and like immediately, and then also like rolling and using vibrations. I use a carb buffer, but in practice, like at actual races, like the whole post-race thing is like so fun, and you're like feeling super high and like want to hang out with everybody, and like say hi to fans and blah blah blah. So I probably aren't as good about that as I should be, and I usually it's usually a couple hours later when I'm back at the hotel or Airbnb or whatever that I get all that stuff in.
Cool. And you got to show off your talents on the TV show The $1 Million Mile. How were you approached about that, and what was it like being on that show?
Oh, that show was so fun. It was at Spartan World Championships 2018, so my first year racing. So I was in the ESPN like interview room because I'd gotten second, and this this guy Ian Adamson, who's like the head of like the international, it's like a federation of obstacle course racing or something. He's a former adventure racer, so that's like where you'd go like on like week-long adventure races with like kayaking and like climbing and hiking, etc. But he's now become sort of a person, like a recruiter for these types of events and shows. And so he approached me and was like, do you want to be on a TV show? And I was like, yeah, sounds great. And then he hooked me up with the producers, and then I filmed for that film during medical school as well. It was super fun.
And can you tell us what your nickname was on that show?
I was the Harvard Hammer. And it actually didn't occur to me that Hammer is because my name's Hammond until like afterwards. And I was like, oh, that's why I was the Hammer. I thought that was just like the Hammer. Yeah, it's a pun.
Makes sense.
So funny.
And then, so you were a defender on that show, right? And your goal was to chase people down, is that right?
Yep. So the show, it was a game show where contestants called runners were like trying to complete this mile-long obstacle course race to win money. And every obstacle they completed, it was like they would win more money. But to get cash out on that money, they would have to then like decide like, okay, shoot, I'm not going to be able to like run another obstacle before the defender catches me, so I'm going to like exit. So they had to complete an exit obstacle before the defender caught them too. And they had a 2-minute head start on the defender, which was me. And yeah, I mean, it was like sort of sad for them because they just had no chance, they just had no chance. Like you'd see them like take off and you're like, oh man, like that person is gonna die or is gonna crash because they took off so fast, and you just know like based on that person's fitness that they're not gonna be able to keep that up and they're gonna like get really tired. So anyway, it was really fun to go out hunting because like in a race it's one thing, but when you're like trying to catch up with someone, like if you don't catch up with them, it's like not as scary as if like you're racing and someone beats you. So it was just like it was like hunting. It was really fun game, but sad because a lot of those people were like trying to win money for good causes, and it was weird how that show, like it it's like theoretically like I would love for those people to win those nice things, but like when they sort of harnessed our competitive drive. And so like my competitive drive to like catch these people, like I had no actual financial incentive to catch them because I was paid like a flat rate to like participate. So it wasn't like if I beat them, I win more money. It's like, no, I just want to beat them because I want to beat them. I'm competitive. So that was weird, but it was fun.
Did they try to like cast you as like a villain or anything, like trying to like stop these people, or?
Yeah, so that's the funny thing. They tried to like cast the defenders as villains, but at that time I was thinking about how I was going to be applying to residency soon, and I didn't want like residency people to like I didn't trust these TV people. I didn't know them, and so I thought maybe they would try and like show really bad clips of what I would say. So when they were interviewing us for our little like TV interviews, they would try to tell you like say blah blah blah, and I would be like, and so I kind of like skirted around. So I didn't really say anything very mean or anything. And now looking back on it, I wish I'd been more evil because I totally could have been. I just was like trying to like no, like maybe I'll beat them. I don't know. But yeah, they wanted us to be like villains.
Let's see. So we're kind of getting to the end of the interview here. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. But are there any shout outs that you'd like to give, or any final thoughts that you'd like to say to those watching?
You know, I only went to Swarthmore, so I didn't get to experience other undergraduate experiences. But once I got to med school and was like talking to my peers about their undergraduate experiences, like it is something else to go to a small liberal arts college. And like Swarthmore in particular is like so kind of open-minded, at least when I was there. And it's really a great place to be in your, if you're watching this, I guess you probably go to Swarthmore, went to Swarthmore, but like, yeah, I'm like pretty thankful I went there. And then I'll shout out to my nutrition sponsor, Endurelite. It's this small company that doesn't exist on social media because they rely on word to mouth. And Endurelite, like if you want sort of evidence-based nutrition, like they're legit. Like I'm not just saying that because they're my sponsor. So for post-race nutrition or post-workout nutrition, pre-workout, everything in between, check them out.
Great.
Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and I wish you the best of luck with your residency and everything going forward.
Yeah, so great to meet you.